How do we even know
Yeah.
what to trust anymore?
In terms of operations, the specificity is important. It's like, wait, is Area 51 really that? Were the Nazi scientists really that? Is the DARPA program about biohybrids really that? You know, I can speak to them specifically because I think that, again, I'm going to give you the information that I know, and then people can decide what they think.
So I have a Patreon account. They're our top supporters. They've been with us since the beginning. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them, and neither would you. And so one of the perks that I offer them is they get to ask a question to each guest. And so today's question is, with today's attitude towards fake news, do you think we will ever gain public knowledge of the topics covered by your books?
What a great opener question. I think of the idea of fake news, as air quotes, entwined with the idea of strategic deception. And that is something I have written about in many of my books. No doubt we will cover this. But an interesting question there, because the takeaway that I see is like, how much should we trust what we are being told? And that is certainly why I write books, is to sort of uncover these long-held secrets and bring them into the light of day. And so to answer the question specifically, I think you want to go to as many sources as possible. It's why I read all sides of the aisle. I will read international papers. I will watch different programs that people might otherwise think are in opposition of one another. Read things on the internet, listen to the podcasts, and then come to your own opinion about things. Because
that's interesting. Well, one, how much should we trust? I would love to talk to you about that. But, you know, I try to do that. And I try to read both sides of the aisle. Do you get a lot of flack for that?
I used to. But I don't anymore, because I think that's very much part of my reporting style. No one knows how I vote. No one needs to know how I vote. I write about POTUS in all of my books, President of the United States. And so that keeps me in the middle, and it also allows me to have incredible conversations with all kinds of people. And that, I think, keeps me comfortable with what I'm learning, because I'm learning how to make my own judgments about things. And I think America is getting savvy to that as well.
Man, that's great to hear, because I do that. I think people probably know which way I vote, but I don't like to make it a point of any of my discussions. I like to hear both sides. And sometimes especially when I'm critical to my own side, man, I really get a lot of flack. But, you know, I think that's part of the problem that we're facing in the country right now is people have become, and I've talked about this several times, I think people have become, they're not tied to their own ideas, values, and beliefs anymore. They're tied to their political candidate and party. And you know, when you do that, you're only getting what that side wants you to hear, whether you like it or not, you know? And so it's refreshing to hear somebody that listens or pays attention to both sides and gives a bipartisan take on whatever you're reporting on. So thank you for doing that.
Well, also what comes to mind is people talk a lot about tribalism, right? Like, and there's tribe and then there's tribal. You want to have a tribe. You want to have people that you know have your back. And usually those people, the tribe, the true tribe, right? They actually are perfectly fine with you having opinions. At least this is my take. My tribe is, Annie with her opinion about that, or Annie with her interest in that. They're fine with it. You know, they might not like that or do that or think that, but that's the tribe. Tribalism is like, that's where I think it becomes a little bit dangerous and fraught, because then you're supposed to adopt really a party line. You have to have an opinion about this and that just puts you in a really awkward position, because I think naturally we're all such creatures of multiple ideas and multiple ways in directions in which we want to head. And they don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird times we're in, right?
Well, there are weird times, but I am a historian also. And so all of my books cover, going back national security issues to World War II. And we, if we're talking about Americans, have always been tribal, have always had weird times. So I'm not as pessimistic about how terrible the times are right now, because I've read so much history about how terrible the times have always been.
Yeah.
It's kind of how you want to see it.
Do you find times today different than some of the stuff that you've studied in the past?
One thing about me is I'm always looking for the similarities and then understanding the differences. But I find I'm an optimist at heart, even though I write about these incredibly dark, grim topics. I think that, I'm a pragmatist, right? Know the facts. Don't be afraid of them. But the optimism of it all comes from being able to see, certainly as I get older, and I write more books and I learn more things and I interview more interesting people. Oh, we are more similar than different, both as people and also culturally through the different decades and generations of modern America.
Interesting. You brought up how much should we trust?
Mm-hmm.
How do we even know what to trust anymore?
Well, I look at things specifically head on. So I would be better to your listeners and my readers to deal with specifics than big generalizations. I can certainly make big generalizations about what I think about war and weapons and U.S. national security and secrets, because that is what I write about. But in terms of operations, the specificity is important. It's wait, is Area 51 really that? Were the Nazi scientists really that? Is the DARPA program about biohybrids really that? I can speak to them specifically because I think that, again, I'm going to give you the information that I know, and then people can decide what they think. Because the takeaway is incredibly... Want me to give you an example?
Yes, please.
Okay. So this is the best example I can think of point of view. When I wrote a book called Operation Paperclip, which is about the Nazi scientists who came to America to build our weapons programs after World War II. So they were former Nazis. Mm-hmm. And this book published in 2013, 2014, back in a time when a journalist like me could actually appear on Fox News and CNN on the same night. You almost can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Right? They just don't, the royal they don't let you. But you could then. And I would go on to let's just call them the conservative and the liberal, right? Mm-hmm. So I'd go on to a conservative organization's media program and they would say, "Oh my God, Annie Jacobson, thank you so much for writing Operation Paperclip. I mean, you showed us that these guys were these terrible Nazis. They were odious, et cetera, but man, did we need them to come to the United States, or otherwise we'd all be speaking Russian now. So thank you for writing this book." Okay? Then I would go over to the really liberal stations, maybe even the Holocaust Museum type scenarios. And they would say to me, "Oh my God, Annie Jacobson, thank you so much for writing this book, Operation Paperclip. You showed us in no uncertain terms these horrible, evil, criminal minds should have been hung at Nuremberg. They never should have come here. You make that so clear. Thank you so much for writing this book."
Interesting.
You take away, they read the same book. They took away a point of view based on the same set of facts. And so when I can understand that, about people. And there's no, I suppose one group isn't right and one group isn't wrong. And when you can look at it like that, and maybe this also comes into play of you being, we talked about this earlier, like when you're a new parent versus my kids are college aged, right? The wisdom that comes with parenting, I believe, if you want to be an optimist, is that you learn how to help your children understand that different points of view are fine. Same sets of facts.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.